Well, Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach. Now, last year, I also gave the sermon on Sukkot, and I checked it. Actually, I looked it up in my own computer files because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to talk about the same thing 2 years in a row. Now, no one would notice except for me, but I would know, and it would really annoy me. So I went to check. Now, last year, I talked about the different names for the holiday of Sukkot, and to be honest, it was kind of challenging on a personal level to read that sermon. It's hard to read it in the year 2020. I talked about how one of the names for Sukkot is Chag HaAsif, the holiday of ingathering. It's an agricultural reference. We are an agricultural people after all. But I talked about, so clever, that we gather together on the holiday of Sukkot. It's what we do. We gather together. Well, that might have been true in 2019, but in 2020, yeah. I talked about how our ancient rabbis, in all their wisdom, called Sukkot Zman Simchatenu, the time of our rejoicing. No other holiday gets called that. This is the most joyful holiday. Wow, that's great. Why? Well, in my sermon from last year, I made the connection that we are rejoicing so much because we are gathering together with those who we love on this holiday of Sukkot. It's the most joyful when we are together. Again, 2019, okay, that's nice. 2020, little harder to give that message. Because truth be told, we can't have the same Sukkot that we always do. Now, I live in an apartment, so I don't build a sukkah. The only sukkah experience I have is here at Shul. Like many of you, I have to come to Shul to be at the Beth Yeshurun sukkah to have that sukkah experience. And here, we can't do all the same sukkah stuff that we always do. Normally, Sukkot it's such a frenetic week, for people in general, but for clergy and our staff, it's so much energy and so much effort. We have at least one, sometimes two programs a day in the sukkah. There is something for every single age. We have literally hundreds of people. It's wall to wall. People are talking and eating and laughing, and we couldn't do it this year. We couldn't safely do it this year. So our calendar is by necessity slimmed down. It's not that we don't want to do our usual programs. Gosh, we really do want to do them. We really want to come together. But we can't take that risk with people's health. It's not worth it, as painful as a decision that is. So we have alternatives, and they are good ones, but it's still not the same. It's just not the same. And if you celebrate at home, if you build a sukkah in your home, it's also not going to be the same, because either you're not inviting folks over, which is a perfectly valid choice, or you're inviting only the folks over that you kind of cluster up with, which is also a valid choice, or you're having meals and hanging out in your sukkah socially distant, with masks. And that's different. No matter what you do this year, this Sukkot is different. We're supposed to celebrate Chag HaAsif, the festival of gathering, and Zman Simchatenu, this time of our rejoicing. And how can we rejoice by gathering together if we can't gather the way we always have? That answer was not in my 2019 Sukkot sermon. Luckily, as in all aspects of life, some very, very, very old rabbis had an idea that actually applies to right now. The Rambam was a medieval Sephardi rabbi. And on the subject of Sukkot and the subject of rejoicing in this particular time, the Rambam said, you must rejoice with your friends and family. Okay, not helpful. You must eat, drink, and be merry. Still not really that helpful. But the Rambam goes on and says that while one eats and drinks, they must feed the non-Jew and the orphan and the widow and all the other disadvantaged folks. The Rambam says this: one who locks the gates of their yard and eats and drinks with their family and their friends without giving anything to those in need, the Rambam teaches, that person's meal is not rejoicing in this divine commandment to celebrate Sukkot. That person is rejoicing in their own stomach. So says the Rambam. He's teaching us that true joy is felt not in the stuff that we have for ourselves, but in what we can do for others who are not able to do for themselves. So will this Sukkot be like the Sukkot in the past? No, obviously not. It can't. We cannot safely have our mega big, hundreds of people, wall-to-wall folks events here at Shul. Can't do it safely. We have stuff, but we don't have that stuff. And maybe you can't do the stuff you usually do in your home to celebrate Sukkot. And that is unfortunate, and we can be sad about that. But that doesn't mean that Sukkot this year is a wash. Because during this time of Zman Simchatenu, this time of our rejoicing, let us rejoice as the Rambam taught that we should. Truly to fulfill God's commandment to rejoice by caring for others with less than ourselves. So whether that's simply donating to the Houston Food Bank, or going there in person and volunteering, or getting involved with local lawmaking and initiatives to try to solve the problems, the systemic issues that cause people to be hungry, issues that, if solved, would reduce the need for food banks themselves. No matter how you choose to rejoice this Sukkot, I hope you find a way to feel true joy, the joy of bringing joy to those in need, just like our sages teach us to do. I wish you a most joyful Sukkot, a Shabbat Shalom, and a Chag Sameach.